Ryan walked through the bustling streets of downtown Chicago, the rhythmic patter of rain against the pavement merging with the distant sounds of honking horns and the chatter of pedestrians. A successful entrepreneur, his tailored suit and polished shoes spoke of wealth, yet an invisible weight pressed heavily on his shoulders. The recent death of his wife, Emily, lingered in the corners of his mind like a persistent shadow. Each step felt heavy, each breath a reminder of the life he had lost. As he navigated through the city, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of isolation that enveloped him. The skyscrapers loomed above, casting their long shadows, mirroring the void that had settled in his heart. He had everything, money, status, and a thriving business. But without Emily, it all felt hollow. A deep sense of loneliness pervaded his thoughts, gnawing at him like a relentless tide. He missed her laughter, her warmth, and the way she had made even the simplest moments feel special. "Why did you have to leave me?" he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible over the rain. A couple passed by, their hands intertwined, and for a fleeting moment, envy coursed through him. He averted his gaze, focusing instead on the ground, where puddles formed small lakes that reflected the gray sky above. Suddenly, Ethan's attention was drawn to a figure huddled beneath a worn blanket on the corner of a nearby street. The woman, visibly pregnant, shivered as she clutched the fabric around her. Her hair was matted, and her face, though weary, held a flicker of resilience. Something about her struck him, a reflection of his own vulnerability, perhaps, or a reminder of the fragility of life. Compelled by an overwhelming surge of empathy, Ethan approached her. "Excuse me," he said softly, crouching down to meet her gaze. "Are you okay?" The woman looked up, surprise mingling with caution in her eyes. I'm managing," she replied, her voice faint but steady, "just trying to stay warm." Ethan felt a pang in his chest. The world around him seemed to fade, and in that moment, it was just the two of them. "You shouldn't be out here in this weather," he said, digging into his pocket. He withdrew a thick stack of bills, feeling the weight of the decision he was about to make. "Here, take this. Find a shelter, please. You need to take care of yourself and that baby." Her eyes widened as she stared at the money in his hand. I can't take that," she stammered, shaking her head. Disbelief etched across her features. "I don't deserve—" "Just take it," Ethan insisted gently. "You deserve help. You deserve a chance." With trembling hands, she reached for the money, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice breaking. "I don't know what to say. This is more than I could ever hope for." "Just promise me you'll use it wisely," Ethan replied, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within him. "You have a life to care for now." "I will. I promise," she whispered, clutching the money to her chest as if it were a lifeline. "My name is Sarah, by the way." "Ethan," he introduced himself, a small smile breaking through the sorrow that had held him captive for so long. "Take care of yourself, Sarah." As he turned to leave, Ethan felt the weight of the encounter settle within him. The rain continued to fall, but something had shifted in the air. Perhaps it was the connection they had forged in that brief moment, or perhaps it was the realization that kindness still existed in a world that often felt cold and unforgiving. He walked away, his heart heavy yet strangely lightened, as if a burden had been lifted. Maybe there's still hope, he thought, though a lingering sadness remained. The memory of Emily's smile flooded his mind, a bittersweet reminder of what he had lost. He missed her dearly, but maybe, just maybe, this act of kindness could be a turning point for both him and Sarah. As he made his way down the rain-soaked street, thoughts of the encounter replayed in his mind. He had been so consumed by his own grief that he had forgotten the power of connection, the impact of a single choice. It was a reminder that life could take unexpected turns, and sometimes, in the most unlikely of encounters, there lay the potential for redemption. "Maybe I can help others just like I helped her," he pondered, the idea blooming within him like a fragile flower pushing through concrete. Perhaps that's what Emily would have wanted. With each step, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He envisioned creating a foundation in Emily's name, providing support to those in need, especially mothers like Sarah. The thought energized him, and he quickened his pace, eager to return to his office and sketch out a plan. But just as quickly as the idea had emerged, doubt crept in. What if I fail? What if I can't make a difference? he wondered, shaking his head as if to dispel the negativity. I have to try. For Emily. As he reached his car, the rain began to subside, and the clouds parted just enough to reveal a sliver of sunlight breaking through. It felt like a sign, a reminder that even amidst darkness, light could find a way in. Ethan climbed into his car, his thoughts still swirling. He glanced back at the street corner where he had met Sarah, and for a brief moment, he imagined her cradling her baby, finally safe and warm. A smile crept onto his face as he envisioned the possibilities ahead, the lives he could touch, the hope he could inspire. Driving away, he felt a newfound resolve. The path wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to embrace the challenge. After all, it was through the choices we make that we shape our destinies. And in that moment, Ryan was determined to create a legacy of compassion and kindness in honor of the woman he had loved, a legacy that could illuminate the lives of others, just as Emily had illuminated his own. As the rain poured down in sheets, Sarah felt a sense of rebirth wash over her as she entered the warmth of the shelter. The $300 Ethan had given her felt like a lifeline, allowing her to escape the cold, unforgiving streets of Chicago. She had secured a small room in a bustling shelter, a place filled with the sounds of laughter, tears, and shared stories of struggle. The atmosphere was intoxicating. It was a community of women, all with battles etched into their faces, yet each radiating a flicker of hope. "Welcome, newcomer," a voice called out, breaking through Sarah's thoughts. She turned to see a woman in her late 30s, her hair tied back in a messy bun. The woman had a warm smile that seemed to light up the dreary surroundings. "I'm Marissa. This is our little haven, at least until we can get back on our feet. What's your name?" "Sarah," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just got here." Marissa nodded knowingly. "We've all been there. You're not alone anymore." She gestured towards a small table where other women were gathered. "Come and join us. We were just sharing our stories." Feeling a mixture of anxiety and excitement, Sarah followed Marissa to the table. The women welcomed her with smiles and gestures of encouragement. As they shared their stories, Sarah felt the burdens of her past begin to lift, replaced by a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years. "Last week I was sleeping in a park," one woman named Lisa said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Now I'm starting a job at a local grocery store next week. It's a small step, but it feels monumental." "That's amazing," Sarah exclaimed, her heart swelling with admiration. "I just got here and hope to find a job too." Marissa chimed in. "You will. Just take it one day at a time. We're all rooting for you here." As the conversation flowed, Sarah listened intently, absorbing the strength and resilience of these women. They exchanged not just stories but laughter, unearthing the shared struggles that had brought them together. The warmth in the room enveloped her, making her feel like she had found a new family. Meanwhile, in a starkly different part of the city, Ryan sat in the sterile, beige office of his therapist, Dr. Hughes. The faint sound of rain tapping against the window echoed the turmoil in his heart. He had taken the step to seek help, but the process was proving to be painfully difficult. "I just don't understand why it happened," Ethan confessed, his voice strained. "Emily was my everything. I can't shake this feeling that I could have done something to save her." Dr. Hughes leaned forward, her expression empathetic yet firm. "Grief is an intricate journey, Ethan. You must allow yourself to feel these emotions instead of burying them. It's natural to seek blame, but it's important to remember that you were not responsible for the circumstances that led to her passing." "I know, but I can't help it," Ethan replied, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I see people like that woman on the street every day, and I wonder if I could have used my resources to help someone like her. Maybe if I had been more connected to the world, I could have." "Ethan, helping others is noble, but you must first help yourself. Remember what we discussed about self-forgiveness." Dr. Hughes's voice was steady, guiding him through the fog of his guilt. He nodded, but the weight of his sorrow felt like an anchor pulling him under. It was hard to reconcile the life he had built with the emptiness he now felt. The world outside felt vibrant and full of promise, yet he remained stuck in a monochrome landscape of grief. As the days passed, Sarah settled into her new life at the shelter. Each morning she woke up with a sense of purpose. She spent her days searching for job opportunities, fueled by her determination to create a better life for her unborn child. The support of her new friends gave her courage, and she felt more empowered with every passing moment. One bright morning, as the sun broke through the clouds, Sarah decided to explore the neighborhood. The streets were alive with activity, and she marveled at the way life continued around her. She stopped by a local diner, its windows steaming against the chill, and felt an undeniable pull toward it. Inside, the aroma of fresh coffee and baked goods enveloped her, and she approached the counter, her heart racing. "Hi, I'm Sarah. I was wondering if you're hiring." A middle-aged woman behind the counter looked her up and down, her expression unreadable. "We might be. What can you do?" "I'm a fast learner and I can do anything you need," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite her nerves. The woman raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "All right, how about a trial shift tomorrow? We could use some extra help." "Thank you. I won't let you down," Sarah beamed, a sense of hope igniting within her. As she left the diner, she felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Meanwhile, Ethan was in his office, surrounded by the trappings of his success, yet feeling more isolated than ever. He had returned to work, trying to immerse himself in business deals and meetings, but his mind often drifted to thoughts of Sarah. Her image haunted him, the way her eyes lit up with gratitude when he handed her the money. "Ethan, are you with us?" His assistant Claire interrupted his reverie. She had been discussing the latest project, but he had barely registered a word. "Sorry, Claire," he said, shaking his head as if to clear away the fog. "Could we take a break? I need some air." "Of course," she replied, sensing his distress. "Let's take a quick walk outside." As they strolled through the busy streets, the sounds of the city enveloped them. Ethan found himself observing the people around him, their lives unfolding in ways he had previously ignored. He noticed a mother with her child, laughing and playing, and a group of friends huddled together, sharing stories over coffee. "Ethan." Claire's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Are you okay? You've been a bit off lately." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm just trying to figure things out, you know? Life feels different now." Claire nodded, her expression softening. "You've been through a lot. It's okay to feel lost. Just remember, you have people who care about you. You don't have to go through this alone." "Thanks, Claire. I appreciate it," he replied, though he still felt a sense of isolation creeping in. Back at the shelter, Sarah had returned from her day out, her heart pounding with excitement. She gathered the other women in the common area and shared the news about her potential job at the diner. Their cheers and encouragement made her feel like she belonged, like she was part of something greater than herself. "You've got this, Sarah," Marissa exclaimed, pulling her into a hug. "We'll celebrate your first paycheck." As the women rallied around her, Sarah felt a surge of determination. She envisioned a future where she could provide for her child, a life filled with love and stability. For the first time in a long while, the shadows of her past faded, replaced by the light of hope and possibility. That night, as she lay in her small room, Sarah placed her hand on her belly and whispered promises to her unborn child. "We're going to be okay. I'm going to give you everything I never had." In the depths of his solitary existence, Ethan found himself reflecting on his encounter with Sarah. He felt a stirring of empathy for her plight and a longing to connect with someone again. As he closed his eyes that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were destined to intertwine in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. The rain continued to fall outside, but within both Ethan and Sarah, the seeds of new beginnings were beginning to take root. As the weeks passed, Sarah began to settle into her new life, the shadows of her past slowly receding like the storm clouds that so often blanketed Chicago. She felt a sense of purpose growing within her, a flicker of hope ignited by her new job at the diner, and the supportive community of women she had met at the shelter. Each day she found herself thinking less of her old life on the streets, and more about the future she was carving out for her child. One rainy evening, she stood behind the counter at the diner, pouring coffee for a couple of regulars. The rhythmic clatter of plates and the soft murmur of conversation created a comforting ambiance. Sarah watched as families chatted over their meals, laughter ringing out like music, and she couldn't help but feel a pang of longing. She wanted that. She wanted a home, a family, a sense of belonging. "Sarah, you've got a customer," her manager called, pulling her from her reverie. With a smile, Sarah wiped her hands on her apron and approached the table where a man sat, his back toward her. As she reached him, he turned around, and her heart skipped a beat. It was Ryan. "Good evening, sir. What can I get for you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the rush of emotions flooding her. Ethan's eyes widened in recognition, and a warm smile spread across his face. "Sarah, right? I remember you." Surprised, she replied, "Yes, I'm sorry for interrupting your work," he continued, glancing around the diner. "But I just had to come in and see how you're doing." She felt a heat rise to her cheeks. "I'm doing well, thank you. I got a job here and I'm starting to plan for the baby." "That's wonderful to hear," Ethan said earnestly, his gaze softening. "I'm really glad you're doing better. You deserve it." "Thank you," Sarah replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Your kindness made a big difference." Ethan nodded, the warmth in his eyes flickering with something deeper. "I just wanted to help. It's what Emily would have wanted." Sarah's breath caught at the mention of Emily's name. It was a bittersweet reminder of the woman she had admired from afar, a woman who had inspired her in more ways than one. "I know she would have," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She was incredible." Ethan's expression shifted as if he were lost in memories. "Yes, she really was. I miss her every day." Feeling a strange connection, Sarah ventured, "You're doing a lot for the community in her name, aren't you? I've seen some of the events you've been involved in." Ethan nodded, appreciation flickering in his eyes. "I'm trying to honor her memory. She had such a big heart, always helping those in need. I want to continue that." A silence hung between them, thick with unspoken words and emotions. Sarah felt a pull towards Ethan, a kinship forged by shared loss and new beginnings. "It's admirable," she finally said, breaking the tension. "I think it's important to carry on her legacy." "Thank you," he replied, sincerity etched across his features. "It helps to know that I'm making a difference, even in the smallest ways." Suddenly, Sarah's manager called out from the kitchen, breaking the moment. "Sarah, we need more fries." "Right away," she called back, turning to Ethan. "Excuse me for a minute." As she rushed to fulfill the order, she couldn't shake the feeling of Ethan's gaze on her. It was as if he saw more than just a waitress. He saw a person striving for a better life, a mother determined to provide for her child. When she returned to his table, Ethan was still there, his coffee cup half empty. "Do you have any plans for the weekend?" he asked, probing gently. "Not really," Sarah admitted, glancing around the diner. "Just working, I guess. Why do you ask?" "I'm hosting a community event on Saturday. It's a fundraiser for the shelter," Ethan explained. "I'd love for you to come. It might be good for you to meet some people who can help you further your plans." The invitation caught Sarah off guard. "Oh, I don't know. Please," he urged, a smile dancing on his lips. "It would mean a lot to me. Plus, it's a chance to connect with others who've been through similar struggles. You might find it inspiring." Taking a deep breath, Sarah considered the offer. It was an opportunity to step out of her comfort zone, to embrace the changes in her life. "Okay," she said finally, "I'll come." "Great. I'll send you the details. You won't regret it," Ethan said, his eyes brightening with enthusiasm. After their brief conversation, Sarah returned to her duties, though her mind remained fixed on Ethan and the upcoming event. She felt a mixture of anxiety and excitement, the prospect of meeting new people both thrilling and terrifying. Yet, the thought of reconnecting with Ethan, even in a larger crowd, brought a sense of comfort. As the days passed, Sarah prepared for the event, picking out a simple dress that made her feel confident. She practiced her smile in the mirror, reminding herself that she was no longer the woman she used to be. She was stronger, a survivor. Saturday arrived and the sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the bustling streets of downtown Chicago. The venue for the fundraiser was a chic community center, filled with laughter and chatter as people mingled. Sarah walked in, her heart racing as she scanned the room for Ethan. "Sarah!" he called out, waving her over. Relief washed over her as she made her way to him. Ethan looked sharp in a tailored suit, his presence commanding yet warm. "I'm so glad you made it," he exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with genuine pleasure. "It's amazing in here," she said, taking in the decorations and the crowd. "You've done a great job." "Thank you," he replied, gesturing to the tables filled with donated items for the auction. "We've got a lot planned, and I think it'll be a great success." As the event unfolded, Sarah found herself drawn into conversations with other attendees, many of whom shared their own stories of hardship and resilience. She felt inspired by their courage and determination, the energy of the room igniting a fire within her. Throughout the evening, Ethan remained close by, introducing her to people and engaging her in discussions about community outreach. They laughed together, and Sarah found herself feeling increasingly at ease in his presence, the connection between them growing deeper. As the night drew to a close, Ethan stood beside her, gazing out at the crowd. "I'm so grateful you came," he said, his voice low. "I know Emily would have loved to see you here." "Thank you for inviting me," Sarah replied, her heart swelling. "It's been a truly eye-opening experience. I feel different somehow." Ethan turned to her, his expression earnest. "You're not alone anymore. You have a community now, and you have me. I want to help you however I can." The sincerity in his words struck a chord within her. Sarah felt a warmth radiating from Ethan, a light in her otherwise dark past. "You've already helped me so much," she said softly. "I don't know how to repay you." "Just keep moving forward," he said, his voice steady. "That's all I ask. You're stronger than you realize, Sarah." As they stood there, a sense of understanding passed between them, a shared respect for the journeys they were both on. Each was navigating the complexities of grief and redemption in their own ways, but together, they were beginning to forge a new path, one filled with hope and possibility. Unbeknownst to Sarah, the threads of fate were weaving their lives together in ways she could never have anticipated. But for now, as she looked at Ethan, she felt a sense of belonging that had been absent for far too long. The night was just beginning, and with it, the promise of new beginnings awaited. The grand hall of the charity gala was opulently decorated, the shimmering chandeliers casting a warm glow over the guests as they mingled, their laughter and chatter filling the air. Ryan stood at the front of the room, preparing for his keynote speech. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, a storm of emotion swirling inside him. The event was meant to honor the memory of his late wife, Emily, and raise funds for a cause they both passionately believed in. Yet as he gazed at the crowd, he felt a pang of grief that he couldn't shake off. "Ethan, you're up next," a voice pulled him from his reverie. It was his assistant, Clara, who offered him a comforting smile. He nodded, forcing a smile back, even as he felt the familiar ache in his chest. He took a deep breath, adjusting his tie, and stepped up to the podium. As he began to speak, his words flowed with a sincerity that resonated with the audience. He shared stories of Emily's kindness, her unwavering belief in helping others, and how their love had inspired him to give back to the community. The applause that followed felt warm and genuine, but as he spoke, he couldn't help but scan the room, searching for familiar faces. He felt a strange emptiness without her presence, an absence that echoed through the applause. In a corner of the hall, Sarah stood, her heart racing as she watched Ethan. The elegant ambience of the gala was a stark contrast to the life she had known just months ago. Clad in a simple yet elegant dress she had borrowed from a friend, she felt out of place among the well-dressed attendees. She had come to the gala with the intention of expressing her gratitude to Ethan for his kindness. But now, as she listened to his speech, she found herself hesitating. Ethan's words struck a chord deep within her. He spoke with such passion and pain, and Sarah could see the sorrow etched on his face. It reminded her of her own struggles, of the dark days she had fought to escape. She felt a connection to him, an understanding that transcended their brief encounter on the rainy street. Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself of the hope she had begun to nurture. This moment could be a step toward a brighter future. As Ethan concluded his speech, the audience erupted in applause. He stepped down from the podium and took a moment to collect himself. His gaze wandered across the crowd once more, and then unexpectedly it landed on Sarah. She took a step forward, each movement feeling heavier with the weight of what she wanted to say. "Ethan," she called, her voice barely rising above the lingering applause. He turned, and his expression shifted from surprise to recognition. "Sarah?" he asked, stepping toward her, his brows furrowing slightly in confusion and curiosity. "Yes, it's me," she replied, offering a tentative smile. "I wanted to thank you for your generosity. Your kindness changed my life." Ethan studied her for a moment, his eyes searching hers. "I'm glad to see you here. How have you been?" "I'm doing better," she answered, feeling a swell of pride as she spoke. "I found a job at a diner, and I'm staying at a shelter. It's not perfect, but it's a start. That's incredible, Sarah, he said, a genuine smile breaking through his somber demeanor. You should be proud of yourself. It takes a lot of strength to make those changes. They stood there for a moment, engulfed in the warmth of their shared vulnerability. Sarah could see the flicker of hope in his eyes, a reminder that they were both on their own paths of rebuilding and redemption. Your speech was beautiful, she added softly, her voice almost lost in the surrounding chatter. Emily must have been an amazing person. Ethan's expression softened at the mention of his late wife. She was everything good in this world, he replied, a hint of sadness creeping back in. I miss her every day. I can only imagine, Sarah said gently, feeling a pang of empathy for his loss. I admired her from a distance. She inspired me even when I was in a dark place. Did she? Ethan asked, intrigued. How so? Her work with people in need, her ability to see the good in others. It made me want to change my life. I just didn't know how, Sarah admitted, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan nodded, reflecting on her words. She believed in second chances, he said, a distant look in his eyes. I've been trying to honor that belief through my work. I think you're doing a good job, Sarah encouraged, her spirit lifting. You're making a difference. Thank you, that means a lot, he replied, the warmth returning to his voice. For a moment they stood in comfortable silence, both lost in their thoughts. Then, as the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses surrounded them, Sarah felt the need to break the spell. I should let you get back to your guests, she said reluctantly, feeling a strange sorrow at the thought of leaving him. Ethan glanced around, then back at her. Wait, he said suddenly, his expression shifting to one of determination. Can I have your number? I'd like to check in on you, see how you're doing. Surprised yet elated, Sarah nodded. Of course. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers shaking slightly as she entered her number. I'd love that. He smiled warmly, taking the phone from her hands. I'll text you soon. As they exchanged smiles, Sarah felt a rush of warmth spread through her, a budding sense of possibility. She had taken a step forward, reaching out to someone who had unknowingly changed her life. Take care, Sarah, Ethan said as they parted ways, a lingering gaze shared between them that spoke of unsaid words and uncharted paths ahead. See you soon, Ethan, she replied, her heart buoyed by the connection they had forged. As she stepped away from the gala, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of déjà vu that washed over her. It was as if their meeting had been written in the stars, a thread of fate that had finally intertwined their lives once more. Meanwhile, Ethan stood still for a moment longer, the crowd bustling around him. He felt an inexplicable connection to Sarah, something deeper than mere sympathy for her struggle. It was as if he had known her forever, her presence echoing some long-lost familiarity. Shaking his head, he dismissed the thought. Get a grip, Ethan, he murmured to himself, turning back toward the crowd. But as he engaged in conversations with other attendees, he couldn't help but replay their interaction in his mind. He found himself glancing toward the entrance, hoping to catch another glimpse of her. The fleeting moment they had shared lingered like a sweet melody in his heart. Perhaps life was offering him a second chance too, a chance to reconnect with the goodness that Emily had once embodied. As the evening wore on, the gala continued, but Ethan's thoughts remained anchored on Sarah, a pregnant woman who had once been a stranger, but now felt like a kindred spirit. And as Sarah walked away from the gala, the world around her seemed lighter, filled with the promise of new beginnings and the hope that life could indeed offer second chances. Ryan stood in front of his wife Emily's grave, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. The cemetery was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the cold autumn breeze. Raindrops, remnants of the morning shower, glistened on the headstones, creating a somber atmosphere that mirrored his thoughts. He had avoided coming here since the funeral, preferring to cling to memories of her vibrant laughter rather than face the stark reality of her absence. Today, however, he felt a compulsion to confront his grief. Ethan knelt down, brushing away the fallen leaves from the base of the gravestone. The inscription, "Beloved wife, cherished friend," stared back at him, each word a reminder of the love they had shared and the life they had built together. He placed a bouquet of white lilies, Emily's favorite flowers, at the foot of the grave. As he did, a wave of memories washed over him, the way her eyes sparkled when she laughed, the warmth of her embrace, the dreams they had shared for the future. "Hey, Em," he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "I miss you so much. I don't know how to do this without you." Tears prickled at the corners of his eyes, but he blinked them away, determined to remain strong. "I've been trying to honor your memory. I've donated to shelters, started outreach programs. I want to help others, just like you would have." As he spoke, Ethan felt a presence nearby. Turning slightly, he noticed a figure standing a few graves away, placing flowers on a headstone. Though the distance between them was significant, something about her posture seemed familiar. Intrigued, he squinted against the low afternoon light. It was then he recognized her. Sarah, the pregnant woman he had helped weeks ago. Ethan felt a mix of surprise and confusion. What were the odds of running into her here? As he stood, he watched her for a moment, her hands gently arranging the flowers, a look of somber reverence on her face. She looked vulnerable yet strong, a woman grappling with her own past. He hesitated, unsure if he should approach. The cemetery felt like a sacred space for both of them, but curiosity and an inexplicable pull drew him closer. "Sarah?" he called gently, not wanting to startle her. She turned, her eyes widening slightly as recognition dawned. "Ethan," she replied, her voice a mix of surprise and warmth. She stepped closer, the distance between them evaporating. "I didn't expect to see you here." Ethan gestured toward the grave he had just visited. "I was just paying my respects." He paused, searching for the right words. "What brings you here?" Sarah glanced back at the headstone she had been tending. "This is my friend Julia. We lost touch years ago, but she was a huge part of my life. I visit whenever I can." Her voice trembled slightly, and Ethan could see the pain etched in her features. "I'm sorry," Ethan said softly, feeling the weight of her loss. "It's never easy, is it?" "No, it's not," she admitted, looking down at the flowers. "But I come here to remember the good times we had, to feel connected to her. It helps me keep moving forward." Ethan nodded, understanding her sentiment all too well. "I can relate. I've been trying to find a way to move forward too." He paused, studying Sarah's face. "You're doing well, I see. How have you been since our last encounter?" A flicker of warmth lit up her eyes, and she straightened her posture. "I'm doing better, actually. I found a job at a diner nearby. It's not much, but it's a start. I can save up for my baby." "That's great to hear," Ethan replied, genuinely pleased. "You deserve that chance." "Thank you," Sarah said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I still think about that day when you helped me. It changed everything for me." Ethan felt a surge of emotions at her words. "I was just doing what I thought was right," he admitted. "But it seems like you're the one who is really changing your life." For a moment, they stood in silence, two souls weighed down by their pasts, yet encouraged by their shared present. The air was heavy with unspoken words, and Ethan felt a strange connection to Sarah, a bond that transcended their individual struggles. "Do you come here often?" Sarah asked, breaking the silence. "Not since the funeral," he admitted, his voice low. "I've avoided it, to be honest, but today, I felt like I needed to." He looked at her, a spark of vulnerability in his eyes. "I guess grief can be a lonely road, can't it?" Sarah nodded, her expression softening. "It really can, but it's important to lean on others when we can. I've learned that the hard way." Ethan felt a pang of understanding. "I lost Emily a few months ago," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "And since then, I've felt so lost." "I can't imagine," Sarah said gently. "But it's okay to feel lost. It means you loved deeply." A silence settled between them, heavy yet comforting. Ethan considered her words, the truth in them resonating deeply. He had been so consumed by his grief that he had forgotten the love that had once filled his life. "Do you want to talk about it?" Sarah offered, her voice encouraging. "Sometimes sharing the burden can lighten it." Ethan hesitated, but then nodded slowly. "I would like that. I think I need it." He gestured toward a nearby bench, and they both took a seat, the gravity of their conversation settling around them. "I met Emily when we were both in college," he began, his voice steadying as he spoke. "She was everything to me. Kind, passionate, always saw the good in people. We built a life together. I thought we would grow old side by side. But cancer took her away too soon. His voice cracked, and Sarah reached out, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "That's so unfair." Ethan inhaled deeply, grateful for her presence. "It is. And I've been struggling to find purpose since. I thought maybe helping others would fill the void, but it feels like I'm just going through the motions." "Helping others is a beautiful way to honor her memory," Sarah said, her gaze steady. "But it's also okay to take time for yourself and heal. You don't have to rush into anything." He looked at her, amazed by her insight. "How did you become so wise?" he asked with a faint smile. She chuckled lightly, her eyes sparkling. "Let's just say life has taught me a few lessons. It hasn't been easy, but I've learned to appreciate the little things, like this moment." Ethan felt a warmth spread through him, a connection forming that felt both unexpected and profound. "I'm glad we met, Sarah. You've reminded me that there is still good in the world, even amidst the pain." Their eyes locked, and for a brief moment the weight of their respective pasts felt lighter. The world around them faded, leaving just the two of them, two souls navigating a storm, finding solace in shared understanding. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Ethan felt a sense of hope stirring within him. Perhaps this unexpected reunion was a sign, a reminder that life had a way of weaving paths together in the most surprising ways. "Thank you for being here today," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "Thank you for inviting me into your space," she replied, her smile radiant. "It's nice to know we're not alone in this, isn't it?" Ethan nodded, feeling the warmth of her words. In that moment, he realized that sometimes, amidst loss, new beginnings could emerge from the most unexpected encounters. The air was thick with an unspoken tension as Ethan and Sarah stood beneath the sprawling branches of a nearby oak tree, the world around them fading as they confronted the ghosts of their past. Ethan's features were etched with a mixture of anger and sorrow, the revelation of Sarah's connection to Emily stirring feelings he had buried deep within. He clenched his fists, struggling to find the right words, while Sarah shifted nervously, her eyes darting to the ground. "I don't understand," Ethan finally said, his voice low but steady, cutting through the stillness of the park. "Why didn't you say anything sooner? You were friends with her, and yet you let me believe you were just a stranger." "I didn't know how," Sarah replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I was ashamed of my past, Ethan. I thought if I could just start over, leave everything behind, maybe I could forget. But the truth is, I never forgot Emily. She was the one who tried to lift me from the darkness." Ethan's expression softened momentarily, recalling the compassionate light Emily had always carried. "You don't know how hard it was for me after she died. I thought I could move on, but every day feels like a reminder of what I lost. And now I find out you were part of that world. It feels like a betrayal." "It's not a betrayal," Sarah insisted, stepping closer. "I didn't mean to deceive you. I was just trying to survive. After Emily helped me, I fell deeper into my addiction. I lost touch with her, and when I finally got clean, it was too late. I never got to thank her for all she did for me." Ethan's eyes searched Sarah's for sincerity, and he felt a pang of empathy for the woman standing before him. They were both haunted by loss. They were both trying to navigate the shadows of their past. "So what happened? How did you end up on the streets?" "I lost everything," Sarah confessed, tears welling in her eyes. "The drugs took over. I lost my job, my family, eventually I lost myself. It was a long, hard road, but when I found out I was pregnant, something clicked. I knew I had to change. I wanted to do it for my baby. That's when I met you." Ethan's heart ached for her, realizing that her journey mirrored his own in some ways. "Emily would have wanted to help you," he murmured, almost to himself. "She had a way of reaching out to those who needed it." Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket, interrupting their moment. She fished it out and glanced at the screen, her expression changing as she read the message. Oh no," she stammered, her face draining of color. "It's my mother. She passed away." "What?" Ethan's voice rose in disbelief. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. Do you need me to—" "She left me a house," Sarah interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I haven't spoken to her in years. We weren't close. I thought she didn't care about me anymore. But she's left me something. something I never thought I would receive. Ethan watched as Sarah's hands trembled, the weight of her emotions crashing over her like a wave. "What will you do?" he asked gently, trying to grasp the magnitude of what she was facing. "I don't know," she admitted, wiping away a tear. "I don't know how to feel. I should be grieving, but I also feel this strange opportunity. A house, it could mean stability, but it's also a reminder of everything I lost." "Let's go together," Ethan suggested, surprising even himself with his offer. "You shouldn't have to face this alone. If you need to sort through everything, I can be there for you. We can figure it out together." Sarah looked up at him, her eyes wide with gratitude and disbelief. "Are you sure? I don't want to impose on your life. You have your own grief to deal with." "There's nothing imposing about it," Ethan replied firmly, a newfound determination igniting within him. "We both have our pasts. Maybe helping each other is what we need to start moving forward." With a hesitant nod, Sarah agreed, and they made their way to her mother's house. The drive was filled with an uneasy silence, both lost in their thoughts. Ethan couldn't shake the weight of his own unresolved grief, but he also felt an undeniable pull towards Sarah. She was a reminder of Emily's kindness, a living legacy of the impact one person could have in another's life. When they arrived at the modest home, a small, weathered cottage in a quiet neighborhood, the atmosphere felt heavy with memories. Sarah hesitated at the door, her hand hovering over the doorknob, anxiety evident in her posture. "Are you ready?" Ethan asked softly. "I guess there's no turning back now," she replied, taking a deep breath before pushing the door open. The hinges creaked, and they stepped inside to a dimly lit living room filled with dust and shadows. The atmosphere was thick with a sense of abandonment, but amidst the chaos, Sarah spotted a framed photograph on a side table. She walked over and picked it up, revealing a picture of her younger self with her mother, both smiling brightly. "I remember this day," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "We went to the beach. It was one of the few happy times we had together." Ethan stood back, giving her space as she absorbed the wave of memories. "It's good to remember the happy moments," he said quietly. "They remind us of who we are and who we want to be." As Sarah placed the photograph back down, she noticed a small envelope on the table, slightly hidden beneath a pile of old mail. Curiosity piqued, she reached for it and opened it, revealing a letter inside. "It's addressed to me," she said, her brow furrowing as she began to read. "What does it say?" Ethan asked, stepping closer to glance over her shoulder. "It's from my mother," Sarah read aloud, her voice trembling. "She talks about her regrets, the choices she made that led to our estrangement. She wishes things could have been different. And she mentions Emily. She says Emily was her light when she was lost, just like she was mine." Ethan's heart raced as he listened, the pieces of the puzzle slowly coming together. "Your mother. She knew Emily well." "She did. She writes about how Emily helped her during her struggles, just like she helped me," Sarah replied, her voice thick with emotion. "It seems Emily was there for both of us in our darkest moments." As the weight of the letter settled in the air, Ethan fished out a small, folded piece of paper from his wallet. It was the letter Emily had written to him long ago, a hidden message he had kept but never fully understood. He hesitated, then finally unfolded it, revealing Emily's neat handwriting. "Sarah," he said softly, his hands shaking as he revealed the letter to her. I think there's something in here that might change everything." "What do you mean?" she asked, her eyes widening with intrigue. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the magnitude of the moment. "Emily wrote this just before she died. It talks about her love for me, but also mentions a choice she made, something related to helping others. It's as if she knew that our paths would somehow intertwine, even after she was gone." The room felt charged with energy as they both processed the gravity of their situation. They were standing at the crossroads of their lives, bound by Emily's spirit and the choices they had yet to make. "Maybe this is our chance," Sarah whispered, her eyes glistening with hope. "To honor Emily's memory, to help each other heal." Ethan nodded, feeling an overwhelming surge of determination. He realized that this unexpected twist of fate had brought them together for a reason. With a mix of sorrow and hope, he closed the distance between them, ready to embrace the journey ahead. Together, They would unlock the truths of their pasts and create a future that honored the legacy of the woman who had brought them together. As Ethan held the letter close, he felt a sense of purpose wash over him. The secrets of their intertwined lives were about to unfold, and he knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Ethan nodded, feeling an overwhelming surge of determination. He realized that this unexpected twist of fate had brought them together for a reason. With a mix of sorrow and hope, he closed the distance between them, ready to embrace the journey ahead. Together, they would unlock the truths of their pasts and create a future that honored the legacy of the woman who had brought them together. As Ethan held the letter close, he felt a sense of purpose wash over him. The secrets of their intertwined lives were about to unfold, and he knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together.